So my name is Mark Borkowski, and Borkowski PR are trying to give some visibility to this event. So I just thought I'd just give you a brief introduction of why we're here with Ron. We're at Make Diversity, which is the creative hub of Somerset House, an incredible facility supported by the Trust. Somerset House has illustrious history, and one of the things that I found out when I first took our offices here, it was a resting place of Oliver Cromwell. Who knew Oliver Cromwell lay in state here? But I thought it was quite an interesting analogy when we're talking about what the Design Hackathon's aspirations are. Evidently, Oliver Cromwell obviously was a Puritan, but of course he tried to sort of ban Christmas and sent his troops out to the streets of London looking for the smells of cooking goose, of which he would then sort of kick out the household and try to stop them having sort of fun. And there's a sort of underlying sense of that when we come to this. All ideas are born, some great ideas are born over a bottle of wine. And I guess that idea when I met Ron Cregan, and we talked long and hard about the future world. We were talking really about the world that might exist, fired up by the health lobby, who have been supercharged by their aggression on the tobacco companies in terms of pushing forward plain packaging on tobacco. This has sort of given a life to the other unloved industries, fast food, sugar, salt, and of course alcohol. And we're facing a very different world coming forward, where perhaps the trademark that exists cannot operate in the way that it might have operated going forward. And the health lobby have been very, very aggressive over the legislation. Only last week in Ireland, the Irish Parliament passed regulations around health warnings on alcohol, which is the first move we've seen that within Europe. So it is a future coming. And Ron and I sat down and we started talking then about fast food, and we talked about all those images. I grew up with Frosties and Sugar Puffs and the Honey Monster, and all those sort of things now, you know, for a boomer, possibly are going to become archaic. What we're trying to do here, and the hackathon starts out, is kickstart a debate. There are various views that exist, both pro and against the way that labelling and packaging and iconography has to change on many things that we're going to talk about today. And the designers in this room are going to start playing with that debate and those ideas of how the new legislation might act and how a brand might be able to operate in this new space. This is a start. This recently also on the backdrop of Stephen Bailey's book Signs of Life, which again was in praise of brands, and of course that set our minds thinking about how we first start to sort of build this up and understand these things. I think it would be quite interesting now in terms of drink aware and all the other legislations that people have to consider in corporate affairs and public affairs in terms of how best to talk about brands. So this is a start point, and it is a world that is coming upon us, and if we all choose to see some of the great labelling and packaging design change, let's be part of that debate and either agree or disagree, but it starts here. So I'm going to hand over to Ron Cregan, who has created Endangered Species, which draws many of the vested interests who might be affected by the oncoming legislation. And from here, I think he'll sort of talk about the design of the morning and how we go forward. But thanks for making time and coming to this rather creative sewer. Thank you. Bye.
I genuinely appreciate Mark's kind of help and support. The birth of Endangered Species was really kind of to try and stimulate people to debate, discuss, think about the implications. And the thing that really kind of triggered me was the alcohol bill in the Republic of Ireland, being an Irishman. That started stimulating me thinking about doing something, and I thought, well, Endangered Species would be a good forum for me to be able to write about it and to speak to people about it, and then to get some opinions on board, and then maybe just start that conversation. If you look at it from a business perspective, you know, we all have clients, and the clients pay our salaries. They pay for us to do what we do. And clients also have their brands, which is their kind of intellectual property and their equities to protect. So it's a difficult space for, as a brand owner, for you to stick your head above the parapet and engage yourself in a conversation or debate about potentially what should happen. joining that kind of thinking to the question, so what does endangered species do apart from you ranting? The Design Hackathon is designed to create an energy ball around which we can discuss and debate and have a look at and come up with ideas and challenge. And then I think that will encourage the brands to have conversations. And at the moment, if you look at various pieces that are going across the world, there's either threats of pretty draconian measures, which are extreme, and this is the extreme. But we could go a third of the way or sometimes half of the way in that direction. We're not quite sure where it's going to happen. The labelling legislation in Ireland is looking at what they call 1/3 of the label area. So if you add 1/3 of the label area, which will be a carcinogenic-led health warning, to the existing statutory information, which is 20%, you get 50% of the label area of an alcohol product being effectively a combination of health warning and statutory information. That's a lot of label area. So your brand space has kind of shrunk dramatically. It makes our job more challenging, but it'll also make those products in themselves much less attractive and engaging and perhaps culturally and socially not as enjoyable or pleasurable or fun as they should be or used to be. And that, I think, needs to be discussed and debated as well. The design aspect of all this nutritional and health information is really interesting because they don't really get designers to do it, to be honest. I don't know who does it, but I wouldn't consider them to be really good graphic designers because the typography is too small, the iconography is rubbish. I mean, it feels very low quality of thinking and of design. And one of the things we also know as designers is that the better you design something, the more impact it has, because that's the commercial reality of what we do. But when we try to then convey educational or nutritional information to people, it is put in the most complex, disproportionate, odd, small type, kind of gnarly, ugly way that people dismiss it. We know how people edit with their eyes. They see what they want to see. And we've got learning behaviour. The more we see something that we don't like, the less we see it. It disappears. Can we flip this on its head and actually take this opportunity to design and create really interesting, educational, engaging information that people will use, understand, and actually interact with? If you can make information and education interesting and engaging and food for the brain, then people really remember what it is and they use it, and that allows them then to be responsible for their own decision making. You know, we don't need government to nag us into a behaviour or to scare us into a behaviour. What we do need is we need the government support in helping us through legislation and or guidance to be able to educate so we can consume and live healthier, more responsible lives. Okay? For today, I thought we'd have fun. We're just going to do this for, I think about 10 or 15 minutes is going to kind of cheer up the day, and then we can all get on with the day jobs. I'm going to give you just a clue, right? So you can use the Sharpies. What I want to do is to redact the information on the packs that you think we can't have. Somebody asked me this morning when I came up with the idea, is kind of what would you do with that? And I kind of went, look, what you do with that, and this is the fun bit, because after this I just want to be able to, I'm going to take photographs of these and kind of use it as stimulus to say, this actually is okay in terms of character and everything else, because it says mature cheddar. It's fine. However, there's a big issue here in terms of if I was the legislator. My issue here would be fat, right? This is basically fat, right? And I want to tell people that this is fat. So if I'm a legislator and I'm going to do some labelling guidelines, what I want to do to this pack, I want to put my big fat box on it, you see? Because at the moment I've got a little fat box, but I want to make it big so we really know what we're buying. Now, if you're miseducated, well, you're not going to buy that because fat makes you fat, blah, 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 all that other stuff they said. Actually, it's nonsense. That, for me, is a bit of kind of redacted information where you take something which is here, which nobody reads, and then you kind of escalate it up. So that's an example of how I want you to redact stuff. But I mean, you use your imagination. The other one, somebody asked me, what's wrong with this? Because you haven't got any character on it or anything, yeah? Well, it's salt, right? And we can't sell salt, so I'm going to redact that. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to go, here we go. Right. So we have ready, that's fine. Right. This, just as a ready meal, interestingly enough, it's got 3 red lights on it, right? So you kind of go, if I'm using that as a product descriptor, and this is how I'm not touching that product, am I? I'm not going to do, how many red lights should you break? I don't know, I genuinely know, but I know that it's high in fat, it's high in saturated fat. What's the difference between saturated and unsaturated fat? Anybody know? Nah. And it's high in salt, right? The only thing is low is in low in sugar. Thank God for that. Okay. So what would you do with a nice little cottage pie? I don't know. And then we've got these snow bites. I don't think we can redact Father Christmas. I think it would be the best one to redact. The Lindt Father Christmas gets completely demolished. And Cadbury's snow bites.
There's a big thing at the moment about businesses having morals.
Yep.
The problem with morals is it can be quite boring and dry and do-goody. Whilst if you're talking to Kellogg's or Diageo, whoever it is, I don't see they would argue about having a more moral approach to selling their products in principle. But when it's put into practice, it becomes dreary and boring and people won't buy the product. So how do we keep joy into...
That's a beautiful question. Because how do you maintain the joy and the pleasure of the product, but make it a healthy and responsible product? Is that the balance? Somebody said to me, once you kind of get into this, it just explodes. You know, vegan. So vegan is a very hot thing at the moment. And vegans are a growing, if tiny, percentage of the kind of world's population, but their share of voice is very, very loud. And veganism is a kind of way of life. It is also, in some ways, can be for a lot of people a moral code, because they have views in terms of animals, and you have to respect that one way or the other, because a person's beliefs are a person's beliefs. And ultimately, not even from a moral perspective, I think you have to respect people's beliefs. However, it's when one person's beliefs influences or tries to affect another person's belief, that's when I kind of get into that. I believe that you should be allowed to live the way that you choose to live, but I also want to be, as a person, allowed to live the way that I choose to live. So it's a kind of mutual respect and responsibility of acceptance. We've now reached the end of the Design Hackathon live event. We had a little bit of fun. We didn't really answer the brief yet. We kind of had a bit more fun kind of going, potentially what could you just do with some existing packs? So behind me are some fun packs that we've effectively kind of redacted and had fun with and doodle with. The real summary is that I want you all to participate, go to the website, have a look at the brief, see if you can make a contribution, upload your ideas, we can even have a conversation. Thank you very much.